From sound design, sound mixing, to color correction, color grading, visual effects, special effects, and even just shot selection and placement. The most difficult part of creating is completing a project. With infinite options in post-production, if it weren't for the assistance of the deadline, as well as the resources that I had from MUSICBED, I may have never finished this project. And that brings us to today. Today, I want to take you through my editing process, my own personal, subjective, creative process. And I want to help you walk away with either a better understanding of what a scattered creative brain looks like, or to break down my personal creative process, which might not even really have a rhyme or reason. And at the very least, give you something entertaining to watch, because I feel like you would enjoy this even if you're not an editor. Now, just a reminder, we have a full behind the scenes breakdown on the production side of how we shot the short film and what it actually looked like day to day. So if you're interested in that, that was pretty insane. So go check that out. I love that video. Today, we are specifically talking about the editing, what goes on behind this screen when I'm sitting in this room for weeks on end. And of course, I need to thank the sponsor of this video as well as the last behind the scenes, MUSICBED, which in my personal experience is the only website that I would go to if I was looking for real cinematic music to use for my short stories, things like weddings, short films, and even commercial projects in general. It doesn't have that stock music feel to it. And truly, without the support from Laura helping me find the music that was essential for all of these videos, I would be so lost. And that is a service that I've never received with any other music provider. So use my code, get 1 month free, never look back. Without further ado, let's condense 2 months of editing into 15 minutes. Sound. I personally feel that sound is as important, if not more important, than the actual visual image itself when it comes to creating a video, as it gives us the opportunity to enrich the cinematic experience. When it comes to sound, there is sound mixing and then there is sound design. Sound mixing is the act of balancing out your sounds, whether it's music, sound effects, or voice. Sound design is the creative act of adding sounds and creating your own soundscape to a video. When I take on a project, I want to make sure that my sound design is so good that you could watch it without music. Now, music, on the other hand, can actually make the entire video. When I'm searching for music for my own videos, it needs to check off one of two boxes. It needs to either physically give me goosebumps. I need to physically feel something when I'm listening to it, or I need to get emotionally attached to it. I need to be on the verge of tears. If it fits one of those two categories, I know I have a winner. So I use music to help me guide my cutting and just like the pacing of my short film overall. And then the sound design comes in as its own creative process afterwards. The music sets the pace and the tone for the short film, and the sound design just really amplifies that atmosphere. Throughout the short film, we use 3 different songs to signal different chapters of the video. The first song we use is to build the suspense, to build the intrigue, to show that our operatives are going out on a stealth mission. The second song we use as our chase music, and the third song we use as our uprising, our hero's anthem. Now, one of the biggest reasons why music is so important to me in the editing process is I look for certain points of the song that visually represent a change. So for instance, in this part of the song, I could visually see the intensity shifting. This is where we introduce the opposition, the enemy, the drones. Now, another reason why I love having music to help me guide my edit is there's some parts of the music where it just dips, or I just feel like there's an opportunity to really amplify the soundtrack by adding sound effects to it. Like maybe there's a slight dip in the audio, and that gives us the perfect time to put the car revving sound effect. For instance, as the song started to pick up in the third act, we had this building intensity while Parker and the car chase are happening simultaneously, and it comes to this harmonious build to the point where the song is about to end and we drop off and everything goes silent and dark. Now, I knew at the end of the song would be the most appropriate time for the short film to go lights out. It just made sense with the way that the song was going to build, climax, and fade out. So these were all great signals for me throughout the edit of where these key shots should be. Now, naturally, every song comes to an end. And when that song is over, you need to transition into another song. So one of the most practical ways I do this is to slice my songs up. As you can see here on the timeline, I slice my songs up into their intro, into their build, and into their end. Every song has its own number of beats per minute, and that's going to determine the pacing of the song. But most songs, when editing with them, I find have a similar structure where they have their intro, they have their build, and they have their outro. If you can find songs within a similar genre, you can very easily start to blend those. However, if you're doing a huge pace shift in your video, I like to use sound effects. This is a great way for you to transition from one scene to the next. For instance, after we set the charge, and the tone of the video just dies down and dips a little bit, we bring it back up with the sound effects reintroducing the drone. And then as we need to shift the tone of this video, I use this as an opportunity to introduce the villain as well as the hero with a ton of sound effects. And without you knowing it, because there's so much going on and you hear the entire atmosphere and you're invested in this point of the video, we transition into the next song. Now, done right, you shouldn't really notice the change in music because the entire tone of the video is shifting visually as well, but this will come with a lot of practice and a lot of videos edited. Visual and special effects. First and foremost, I just want to make it clear that I did not add the CGI to the short film. That was all Kyle, also the director of photography, amazing guy. Kyle was the one who spent countless nights, weeks even, working on the CGI. He's the one who put the watchtower in, put the drones in. He did an incredible job, especially on the timeline and the budget we were working with. So I just want to make sure that he has all the credit for that. Unfortunately, Kyle was not able to be here to be a part of this video. So instead, we're going to break down the visual effects that I personally created in the short film. The lights out effect. In the short film, it all revolves around this giant electromagnetic pulse that they're trying to signal throughout the city. So we have everything in this short film climaxing to this point. The music, the sound effects, the entire chase comes down to the flick of a switch. And then once that switch goes off, the electromagnetic pulse is activated, and I mean, you can't really see an electromagnetic pulse. It's electromagnetic, you know, it's a frequency. So the way that I wanted to show this activating was to do a slow lights out effect, as if it was knocking out all of the power in the surrounding areas. The only way to do this, if it were to be computer generated, would be if you actually built this environment. So what I did was like a very practical solution that took quite a bit of time, but I love the end result of it. This is the effect played back. Now, as you can see, without the final color grade and just the fading out that I did with this shot, you can tell that I just knocked out a few lights and then dimmed the highlights on the core. Now, what I actually had to do in order to make this effect work was to take all of these lights that were already off and essentially copy and paste them to make the lights that were on look like they were turning off. This is what it looks like if I take out the main frame of the video. The irony here is, instead of turning off the lights, we are replacing the lights with windows that are dark. And then when it's done really fast and you zoom it out and you have like all these sound effects going on, it just sells it a lot better. Again, the light flickering was just by chance. We just stood there for 30 seconds, pointed the camera up, and waited for the light to start flickering. So we just chose the right place to be for that. And finally, we had the city-wide lights out. Now for this special effect, at first, I figured it would just be the same process as the last one. And then I sat back and realized how many lights were in this frame alone. Now, I still spent 2 or 3 hours trying to knock out different lights in this image and realized that I got like maybe 10% done. It was getting to the point where I was debating just driving back to Edmonton to shoot this during the day and then night and just transition. I was like, why would I waste 30 plus hours making this effect happen? So finally I had a strike of brilliance, and I realized that if I just brought down all of the highlights and made the image look like it was just really dark, there might be a way to just transition it from light to dark. The first image I started with was just a wide still of the city. To make it look like a video shot, I just did a slow zoom so that there was some motion to the image still. And then from there, I brought this frame into Lightroom. In Lightroom, I decided to desaturate all of the lights here, pull down all of the luminance in those colors, such as the orange. The orange is very prominent in this frame, so I desaturated all of the orange. Then I decided to bring down the luminance. From there, I created another image where I brought down the highlights and the whites to make the image just a bit darker. And then finally, this was a manageable amount of lights to work with in Photoshop. With the patch tools, after probably like an hour or two, I was able to take out all of these remaining lights. And then finally, I Photoshopped out the bridge light, leaving us with this. To create the flicker effect, I just played with the opacity of our middle shot here, where I made it show up, disappear, and then finally fade into the shot. And it created this flicker effect. And then finally, I faded in those last 2 frames. The reason there's 5 different images instead of just 2 is because first I had to desaturate certain colors, and then I had to bring down the lights. Then I removed all of the lights except for the bridge, and finally I removed the bridge. And that's our 5-step process to this effect. One of the major processes of a short film or video in general that I feel is overlooked is the coloring process. Now, much like sound mixing and sound design, we have color correction and color grading. Color correction is balancing our light and colors throughout our image to make sure that there is a unison throughout our entire short film. Color grading is adding your own creative style to your video. I think it's very important to first color correct before you color grade. For instance, in our timeline here, you can see there are quite a few adjustment layers. However, overall, you can see that I put my final color grade on the top layer. So the idea with color correcting is making sure that all of these shots look good enough and similar enough to each other that you can apply a single grade to your entire film by the end of it. Now, when you have certain themes or when you're working with a client who has certain brand colors, the color correcting process could be very critical to your video to make sure that you're best representing them. Now, remember that color is a spectrum of light, and our light is going to change from scene to scene, from shot to shot. So in order to make sure that we have cohesion between each of these shots, I want to introduce you to your new best friend, the vector scope. So we're all familiar with our RGB parade, but over here is our vector scope. It's a circle which represents the color wheel, and it shows you the level of saturation in different colors on the color wheel. This is very important when you're dealing with the same color from shot to shot. This is the perfect way to do it. All you have to do is check your vector scope, see where your level of saturation is at, see which direction it's pointed in, and make sure that this ray of light points in the exact same direction in every shot. Now, when working with a brand specifically, or more creatively, if you have a favorite film color palette, what you can do is just take a screenshot from a frame of that movie, bring it into your timeline, and you can actually reference the parades and the vector scopes of that image and use it as a reference point for your color grading. Now, another trick and tip that I would give you from this experience, or working with brands in general, is if you really want to draw attention to something. Now, aside from framing and shot position, the way that I did this was I introduced a lumetri mask. Essentially, I just manually tracked this lumetri layer to follow the X, whether it was on the bag, on the hat, on the sweater, whatever it was. And I would bring up the highlights and the whites of the image, just to bring it a little bit more attention. And that's probably all I can fit into this 15-minute video. I hope that this was helpful. I hope that this helped you in your process. We've touched on different aspects of making a short film or a video in general. And I thoroughly just appreciate the support from you, as well as MUSICBED for sponsoring this video. Music is one of the most important aspects of your production. So if you're looking to up the production value of your video, maybe music is the first place to look. Total transparency, the very first time I used MUSICBED in a client video, they came back to me with tears in their eyes, and they signed me on for the next 12 months for the rest of their contracts. So, I'm super stoked about that. So if you need a testimony, there it is. Regardless, use my code, get 1 month free, never look back. MUSICBED, thank you so much for sponsoring this video and supporting your local artists. We truly appreciate it. That is all for this editing behind the scenes. If you want to see how cool it was to be on set producing this short film, go check out that video. Or if you haven't seen the short film, what are you waiting for? Go watch it right now. I won't keep you any longer. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one. I love you, MUSICBED.